All right, hello and welcome back to another episode of Just a Girl from Cleveland. This is episode 136. I was thinking about this today. We have officially 2 weeks left of the NFL season. So we have Championship Sunday coming up. Then we have the off week in between the Super Bowl. I don't count the Pro Bowl as an actual week of football. That's fake football, not real. And then we have the Super Bowl. So really 2 weeks left, 3 total football games to go, which is making me a little bit emotional. I'm sure you guys feel the same way, but the football season is just so special. I forget what to do on the weekends when football is over. It consumes when college and NFL is happening, like 4 days of my week, with all day Saturday watching college football. Sundays you're watching NFL, Monday night football, Thursday night football. It is just so ingrained in everything that I do for a couple of months. So I'm sad to see it come to an end. Obviously, we've got the Cavs going a couple of months away from the Guardians starting, but there's really just nothing like all day watching football. So trying to enjoy these last few games. I know I've definitely been enjoying watching these playoffs, as unfortunate as it is that the Browns weren't able to continue past their first game. There's been some really good and fun games to watch after. I feel like wild card week, there were quite a few blowouts. It was a little bit more interesting for the divisional matchups, so that was really fun and exciting, I think, for everyone to watch. So I want to get into all of those games from this past week, predicting how things are going to go this coming week. Then I also want to get into some Brown specific things. So we had a couple coach firings happen. We had a Andrew Berry press conference, which was interesting and felt like there were some good takeaways from that on just his mindset of where the team stands today, where he sees them going in the coming year. And then I also have a quick Cavs conversation to have as well. I think we will start with that because in news that I didn't expect today, Tristan Thompson is in the headlines for something that he did wrong, which I'm not going to say that's the first time that's happened because Tristan Thompson is no stranger to bad news out there about him. But this time it is a 25-game suspension for violating the NBA terms of their anti-drug policy. He tested positive for a couple of these drugs that I had no idea what they were when I saw them listed in these articles. But apparently they are drugs commonly used by bodybuilders and weightlifters for muscle enhancement. I feel like this is just a very dumb move on his part because I think they make it pretty clear on what is legal and illegal to be consuming as a professional athlete. It is very strictly laid out, so I don't really know how you mess up something like this. Just not smart on his part. I'm not sure if he took, a little bit of time off from the NBA and was operating for a while as a media person, and he just forgot how everything worked and forgot all of the rules. But I don't know. That was just crazy news. And honestly, a little bit of a bummer because Tristan has been a little bit more important to this team than I think anyone really anticipated when he first joined the squad again this year. I think, when they signed him, I felt like it was kind of maybe just a respectful move of signing a guy who was obviously a big part of this franchise for a long time, won a championship in Cleveland, and to have him come in and be that kind of veteran presence, someone who could speak to what it feels like to be a part of a contender and really motivate a lot of the younger guys. And he was always, somewhat of a physical player and felt like maybe that would be a good mindset for him to rub off on guys like Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. So it made sense from that perspective, but I don't think people foresaw him. I certainly didn't foresee him contributing extensively on the court. That was just not what was in the cards for him, but it ended up happening. Now you start to wonder how much of that has to do with these performance enhancing type drugs he was taking. I have no idea, obviously, but definitely unfortunate to have him let the team down in that way. And this is probably the most the Cavs have been in the national news the entire season, aside from the ongoing conversations about the future of Donovan Mitchell and whether or not the Cavs are going to trade him and where he wants to go. Those have been probably the two bigger storylines about this team, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, considering that this team is fourth in the East right now, which is where they ended up last season. Right now it's 4-5, Cavs and Knicks once again, as things currently stand. They're on an 8-game win streak without two of their biggest stars in Darius Garland and Evan Mobley. They have found a really fun, legitimate talent in Sam Merrill, who is hitting threes at a rate that is like concerning for someone like him. Like, he is taking a large number of shots. It's not like he's only taking a couple of threes here and there, and that's why his percentages are so high. He is taking like Steph Curry level of 3-pointers in games and still shooting at an extremely high percentage. So they have found a legitimate talent in him, and he has become one of those guys that they just can't take off the court. Like, even when Darius and Evan come back, there is no way that you can really put a massive dent into Sam Merrill's minutes. Like, those are going to have to come out of other guys in some way. Maybe you put his numbers down a little bit, but if he continues the way he's playing, he has very much proven that he should be a part of this rotation as we go into 2024 here and get closer and closer to playoff time. He really has just given them every reason to keep him out there, regardless of what other guys are doing. Now, it's very rare, obviously, I think, that the team is going to be 100% healthy. This is professional sports. Guys are going to be hurt. But even when the team is 100% healthy, I think he has to be out there in some capacity, and they're going to have to find a way to make it work. I'm obviously very interested to see what happens when Darius and Evan both come back, and just how the dynamic of this team really shifts. Because in general, you've been getting really good production out of both Jarrett and Donovan, and they've been playing really well during the time that both of their other stars are out. So it's going to be an adjustment, I think, when everyone is back. But I think the overall message from all of this is that this roster is deeper than it's been in a really long time, than I can remember in quite a while. The depth they have on this roster is really exciting. I think that was one of the big concerns in the playoffs last year, is that when your stars weren't hitting shots, there was no depth on that bench to get anything going. There were no other options that you could go to. It was either your guys are hitting or you're going to lose and you're going to get destroyed. And that's what ended up happening. I have so much more confidence in the current makeup of this team that they get into a tough playoff series where Donovan's having a bad day, or Darius is having a bad day, or Evan or Jarrett, or two of them are having a bad day, and that you have other guys that can come in and step up and make something happen. And I think that's really, really important if you want to have any longevity in the playoffs, even throughout one series of a 7-game series, because guys are going to have up and down days. I mean, how many series over the years have the Warriors had where Steph Curry didn't show up for a while, or Clay didn't, or Draymond didn't, and some other guy on that roster stepped up? I think that was like an underrated part of the Warriors teams for all of those years, was the depth that they did have that allowed them to win games when their top guys were not maybe performing great in the playoffs. And I think that's something the Cavs are finally building again. And look, it makes sense, the timeline that they've been on in regards to rebuilding the depth on this roster. When you bring in a star like Donovan Mitchell, you're giving up a significant number of assets and you're giving up some of your depth. So it's not going to be automatic that you're able to refill that immediately, and it takes a little bit of time. And I think they've done a great job bringing in some pieces. You've got Max Strus, Niang, has been up and down, but he's definitely contributed. Dean Wade's doing a little bit better. So you have guys coming in and providing you some real help off the bench, which makes me really excited for where this team can go. God forbid that no more injuries continue to happen and they can really start to work on things as a cohesive unit when everyone's back. So excited about the state of that team right now currently. Have some tough games coming up here with the Bucks. We've got the Clippers, so there's some tough matchups that I'm interested to see how they continue to compete. Okay, let's get into the Browns updates now. So the biggest news was this was last week, I believe, a little bit after I had recorded last week's episode. The Browns fired Alex Van Pelt, Stump Mitchell, running backs coach, and tight end coach T.C. McCartney. So obviously on last episode, I had mentioned in the mailbag questions about, I guess where I could see personnel changes in this team. And I kind of took that in the player direction, but also the coaching direction. And I felt like on both sides of the ball that Kevin, specifically on offense, and Schwartz on defense could look to bring in some different minds around them that would maybe challenge them in different ways or bring in some new ideas on how to evolve the offense and the defense respectively. And I felt like as good as the offense, worked this year in terms of still keeping things running with 4 different quarterbacks at any point in time, obviously with Deshaun coming back next year, I, felt like Kevin would need to be open to maybe adjusting some of what he's doing to fit what Deshaun does best if, this team wants to have him have success. And it looks like that is exactly the path that he's taking. Now, it's hard to say where these changes and these firings are coming from. There's speculation that it's coming from Jimmy. There's speculation that it's coming from Kevin. I really hope it's coming from Kevin because I would hate for at this point in time with what Kevin just did with this team, potentially about to win Coach of the Year, if Jimmy Haslam is still meddling in his coaching choices, that would be very upsetting to me. So I really hope that this is a Kevin Stefanski choice. I guess we're never going to know for sure, but I do hope it's coming from him. I think I was surprised just because it was all 3 of these coaches right at once, like boom, we're getting rid of all these guys. But if you're going to do it, you want to do it quickly so that you have access to as many of the coaching candidates out there as possible. So I understood it, but it still shocked me, even as I had just said that I thought that they should bring in some different guys on the offensive coaching staff. So the only hire they've made so far was tight end coach Tommy Rees, who was Alabama's offensive coordinator in 2023. Look, I don't know a ton about him in general, other than just what I've seen him do as the offensive coordinator for Alabama. But as good as I think David Njoku was this year, I have no idea how much of that you can contribute to T.C. McCartney or really any position coach. I think we overrate in our minds how much we think these position coaches are doing compared to just a player maybe growing on their own. Like, I'm not saying there's no value there, but I think sometimes as fans and as media, we act like we know exactly, what a particular position coach is contributing because a player in a certain unit performed well. It could be that player is just hitting a breakout year in their career and they're falling into a lot of success, and the position coach, maybe contributed a little, but also just kind of got lucky and happens to be there. David has been a part of this team for a very long time and has grown within this organization. So I would hate to contribute his success to some position coach when I feel like a lot of it is just David getting better himself, coming more into his own as a leader, and then just getting more comfortable on the field and really clicking with Joe Flacco at a perfect time. So I don't feel any type of way, I guess, about that firing and hiring. Hopefully it's just a nice, different perspective to bring into the organization. I think, Stump is someone that is really beloved in the organization and across the league. There are some rumors that potentially he was a media leak within the organization. And I don't know if they were planning things to see who was leaking stuff and figured out that Stump was leaking things. It wouldn't totally surprise me because he's been doing quite a few interviews with the media ever since his firing, which I find to be kind of fascinating. That is not super common. So I don't know what the reasoning is, but look, Nick Chubb has always been good because he is Nicholas Jamal Chubb, not because of any position coach. I'm sure they all like Stump Mitchell, but Nick Chubb is Nick Chubb. And look, the run game in general, I would say, was really halted this season once Nick was gone. So I don't think Stump was evolving things. I think Stump might be a little bit more of an old school coach. Maybe Kevin is looking to bring in some new minds in that regard. And then with AVP, look, he's been there for a while. Obviously, he is not an offensive coordinator that calls plays. So I'm really interested to see what's going to happen here. I think that's going to be extremely telling if Kevin is bringing in an offensive coordinator with the intention of this offensive coordinator calling plays, or if he is just bringing in just someone to shake things up and change things up as an offensive coordinator in a similar role to what AVP did. I have no idea where he is going with it, but I think that's going to be really telling on where this team is going this coming year. I think the one other coaching thing that we should keep an eye out for that a lot of people are talking about is offensive line coach Bill Callahan. So the Titans just hired Brian Callahan, Bill's son, as their head coach. Obviously, this is a really big deal because everyone kind of feels like Bill will want to go and coach with his son in Tennessee, and that the Browns would grant him the permission to go ahead and leave and do that. I'm obviously that's not confirmed yet, but I very much think that's going to happen. And a lot of people have talked about this as well, because obviously Bill Callahan has been a staple of this organization and what he has done with this offensive line over the years. For many years, it was a top unit in the league. I think they've struggled with injuries more recently. And the other thing that Bill Callahan has been really involved in is the run game, along with Stum Mitchell. So, if we lose Bill, obviously it's a bummer because of how much he has been a part of this team. I don't know the extent to what I feel like he does day in and day out, but obviously he has made some great improvements in the organization. That being said, there are definitely things that can still be improved upon with the offensive line and the run game. So maybe it isn't the end of the world that you're going to bring in a different mind there and figure something out. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on all these coordinator positions, but that's just kind of where my mind goes, that maybe there is some room for improvement based on what we saw in this most recent season. This brings me to Andrew Berry's press conference. So he talked pretty extensively in this one. I think he was really open. He always has such a beautiful way with words and makes me so excited about the team every time I hear him talk about it. I think, it was always hard watching him talk with everything with the Deshaun trade, and I don't think there was obviously a good way for those conversations to go. I think they were always going to be a bit of a struggle, but aside from that, he's always been an awesome public speaker and really, he keeps a lot close to the chest, but conveys a lot of things, I think, really well to the public in terms of how he sees this team going in the future. So I had a couple big takeaways that I just wanted to go through. I think one of the biggest things I thought were the way he spoke about Kevin Stefanski. And not really just trusting in him as a play caller and what he did this past season. Obviously, he gave him his props for, coaching with 4 different quarterbacks, for, taking this team to the playoffs with everything that they had gone through. The fact that Andrew believes that he should win Coach of the Year and that he, is maybe on his way to doing that. I think he believes in him as a leader a lot. And that was not something I think we had always heard conveyed about Kevin Stefanski. It was always him coming in as this offensive mind, as this offensive play caller. And I think this year he really cemented himself as a leader within this organization. The players felt that way in the way they talked about him. Andrew Berry felt that way in the way that he spoke about him here. So I think it's really cool to see the way Kevin has grown into this role and gotten more comfortable, which I think is the only reason he might be comfortable enough to give someone else play calling if that's the direction he goes with a coordinator. I'd be perfectly happy if he continues to call plays. You guys know I have no problems with that. But if he goes in that direction, I think he has shown that he can be a great, stable leader of this organization and doesn't just have to be there because he is a good offensive mind. Another thing Andrew talked about was Nick Chubb. So I don't think it seems like Nick Chubb is extremely far along in his recovery. It was a brutal injury, so it makes complete sense that it's going to be a long road. And, it's even into next season, it's going to continue to be a road to recovery. And he seemed like he obviously wants Nick to continue to play with the Browns. He does not want, that snap to be his last snap as a Cleveland Brown, but it seems like he wants to negotiate his contract again in some ways because he's not going to be able to play a full season. He's going to be at some point I think 29-year-old running back this coming season. With the injuries that he has suffered, that will probably make him not the player that he was before the injury. So I think it makes sense for the Browns side to want to renegotiate that. Hopefully Nick can be on board for that as well, because I know they would love to continue to have him in Cleveland. I would love to have him in Cleveland as well. So it seems like that is kind of a little bit up in the air. Obviously, he is under contract on this team, so he does, it would make sense for him to continue to be here. But I think based on all of the circumstances, there's just some questions on how everything is going to net out. He talked about Deshaun a little bit and Joe Flacco. So he, felt like Deshaun is on a good path in his recovery and is going to be, good to go for next season. It seems like he also would love to have Joe Flacco back for the way he was speaking. And, he compared it a little bit to the situation with Jacoby and Deshaun from the previous season, where Jacoby had done such a good job in Cleveland that he was almost too expensive at that point for the Browns to afford him for what he had done. It could be a similar situation for Joe Flacco, where I'm sure Joe's going to want to test the market, see how things look out there, and see if he, can get more money and a better opportunity somewhere else. If not, Joe would also be very happy to be back in Cleveland and has made that extremely clear in all of the interviews that he has done. So that is something to keep an eye on, I think, on whether or not they want Joe, DTR, and Deshaun all as quarterbacks on this roster next season. And I think that's something you have to really consider, considering Deshaun's injury history and the fact that I don't think he has quite learned to play the game in a way that he is protecting himself with his injury history and at his age. He has taken hits in a way that is a little bit reckless at times, and I think that the organization needs to protect themselves with having, good enough backups there to make sure everything is okay if he goes down once again. A couple other Andrew Berry takeaways. He really would like a home playoff game, has been watching these other atmospheres. I feel the same way watching these other atmospheres, that it would change so much if the Browns could have a playoff game and what that environment would do. He is willing to spend whatever it takes. Money does not matter to Andrew Berry. He is going to work that cap, work that system. He wants to create a winning Super Bowl contender, and money does not matter. And then the last thing is that he really feels like he has a lot of the core guys here. He mentioned about Joel Bitonio and Wyatt Teller in that Houston game when the two of them were banged up, injured, did not have to continue to play, and probably could have been like, I'm banged up. Let's just sit this out now. At this point, we're down by however many scores. And they didn't. They wanted to continue playing for their teammates, for the guy next to them. And I think that is the sign of a good and healthy organization. And Andrew Berry really noticed that and felt that way too, that he was like, I think we have something here. We have the right pieces here. Obviously, there's some guys that are going to change, but there's a good foundation for what's going on in this organization. So all really positive things. And we'll just see where everything moves as we get into more coaching hires, free agency, draft, all that good stuff. Okay, so getting into the other playoff games here from this week. So I want to start with Bills Chiefs because I was present for this game in Buffalo. I had a very chaotic day. I made a one-day trip from Cleveland to Buffalo, drove there in the morning. It is very hard to get to their stadium. It is in the middle of nowhere, so insane traffic trying to get there. You have to park very far and walk very far to get there. It was extremely cold out, but it was definitely an experience because that stadium was so electric. Watching that game there it was really cool to be a part of that crowd. as you all know, I'm a big Swiftie as well, and the section I was in was right below where Taylor's suite was. So I wasn't like directly in the section below. There's like the 200s or whatever. I was in the 100s below it. But if I looked up, I could see the box where she and Jason Kelsey and Brittany Mahomes, that whole group was. So that was pretty cool to be that close to it. But just in general, the atmosphere there was absolutely electric. I think, my big takeaways are that fan base would die for Josh Allen. They love that man with their whole heart, and they want success for him so badly. And they are very tortured with this relationship that they have with the Chiefs over the last few years and what it has done to them mentally and emotionally. Like, it is heart-wrenching to watch them go through that. It's such a surreal experience to stand in the middle of another fan base in that way, because I'm so used to being around Browns fans and kind of the mentality we have, the teams that we hate and are rivals of. I will say the Bills fans around me hated the Steelers fans that were there the week before, so that was really something we could bond over. We're hating Steelers fans, but it was so interesting to just kind of put yourself in between a different fan base and see the game through their eyes. And I just really felt for them and how it would feel to constantly be losing in that way to the Chiefs when it matters most. And just the way it ended with the missed kick, that is just, it's such a sad way to go. Those games are always going to be so competitive. Both Patrick and Josh were absolutely bawling out, playing out of their minds. So it was really cool to watch them in that way. A couple weird things, like there was the direct snap fake punt to Damar Hamlin on 4th and 5, I believe it was. Very interesting choice. You had the fumble in the end zone for a touchback, which happened in the corner where I was sitting right in front of me. Automatic PTSD. I was stressed immediately. I was like, oh my God, I can't look at this happen again. It was interesting though, because in this instance, it obviously went against the Chiefs. When it happened to the Browns were playing the Chiefs, so it was in favor of the Chiefs. So it felt like I was watching karma play out in front of my eyes against the Chiefs for what happened with the Browns in this exact round of the playoffs in 2020. So that was really interesting. But overall, one of the best playoff games we've had so far this season, one of the coolest playoff environments, or not even playoff environments, just game environments. I haven't really been to playoff games because obviously the Browns haven't, really been there in history, but one of the coolest game environments I've been to, and really sad for Bills fans. I was excited for Taylor Swift to be able to continue on in her football season with the Chiefs, but was definitely sad for Bills fans in general. Okay, Texans Ravens. So Ravens won 34-10. Pretty much a second half beating, I would say. The first half, it was like, okay, we might have a game here. I think it was pretty clear actually that the Ravens had a little bit of rust from their bye week and started off a little slow. Lamar started off a little slow, and then once they hit their stride, it was like, oh yeah, there's Lamar Jackson, there's that Ravens defense, this is who this team is. And that's a really special team and is going to be a really hard team to beat. I'm so interested to see how this Chiefs-Ravens game goes, because those are two really talented teams. I think the Ravens are the clear more talented team, but you just never want to doubt the Chiefs because of Patrick Mahomes and just the fact that they know what they're doing. They've been here so many times. But the Ravens really, really impressed me in that game. I think this was a game that reminded me how important home field advantage is, because you could tell that the Texans were struggling with the crowd noise. The Ravens crowd was so loud on the broadcast. I think they really struggled with being on the road. Some of the offensive line looked like they were a little bit unsure. They were jumping here and there, a little bit confused. So I think that is one of my biggest takeaways from this year of playoffs in general, was how impactful crowds can be. It feels like now more than ever I have noticed that happen during games, and this one was no difference for sure. Look, really cool year for the Texans overall. The fact that they made it here in the way that they did, with rookie quarterback, first-year head coach is such an accomplishment. They have nothing, I think, to be upset about and are going to continue to build on it. And the Ravens are a really good team, so I don't think there's a ton of shame in losing to them. And the Ravens took care of business. Then we had a close game in 49ers-Packers. So 24-21 was the final. I felt like overall, Jordan Love definitely outplayed Brock Purdy throughout the course of the game, which was interesting because I feel like it flipped at the end where Purdy had a nice drive at the end of the game where Jordan Love threw the interception that kind of sealed the deal at the end. But in general, I felt like Jordan Love played a really, really good game. I think the Packers are obviously another team sort of like the Texans that seem ahead of schedule because no one expected them to do what they did. And I think in terms of the 49ers, I'm going to talk about this in the upcoming matchup that they're going to have against the Lions, but I just feel like when everything's going right for them, they're unbeatable. When there's a couple things that aren't going their way, everything starts to unravel a bit for that team. So I think that's going to be really key in their upcoming matchup against the Lions because, gosh, when they're good, they're really good. But when they have a couple things that they struggle with happen to them, it's all bets are off at that point. Okay, then we have Lions-Bucks, the last game to discuss. 31-23 was the final. I caught most of this game because obviously I was going to Bills-Chiefs when this game was happening, so I was able to watch a little bit of it and watch some highlights of the ending. Baker, he played a nice game overall. I feel like in a way it was kind of the epitome of Baker Mayfield though, where he can do so many things well and then he throws an interception at the end of the game that kind of blows it all up and everything's done. He has struggled with getting it done in the moments where it really matters, which is why the Browns did not want to sign him to that big deal because he didn't have that almost that clutch factor, that it factor that gets it done at the end of games when things really count. And this was kind of another example of that. But overall, he did play a really nice game. Once again, extremely happy for Lions fans and what they are experiencing, not just getting their first playoff win, but now making it to the NFC Championship. So just super cool for them overall. So the upcoming weekend, we've got Chiefs, Ravens, 49ers versus Lions. I am struggling with my predictions for these games because I think it really could go either way in both of these games. I think for Chiefs Ravens, like everything on paper is telling me to pick the Ravens. Vibes are telling me Chiefs because why would I pick against Patrick Mahomes? Why would I do that? I have no reason to pick against Patrick Mahomes because Patrick Mahomes finds ways to win football games. So I just, even on the road, like he's so unfazed and I'm just really struggling to pick against him. I am excited that we're getting this matchup because in all of these years, I don't know if we've had a Chiefs-Ravens playoff matchup. Like we get Chiefs-Bills, we get Chiefs-Bengals. We have not really gotten Chiefs-Ravens. So I'm really excited to see how these two teams match up, how the Chiefs offense that has struggled with their passing game throughout the season with just not having a lot of receiving talent, how they match up against a really good Baltimore defense. I'm interested to see in how this Baltimore offense with Lamar, who has just had, the season of his career, matches up against a Chiefs defense that has actually been really, really good throughout the season. They struggled a little bit in this game against Buffalo, but they've had a pretty good year. So very, very curious, I think, to see this matchup, but I'm going to take the Chiefs just because I can't pick against them. I can't do it. And then for 49ers Lions, I think my pick for this is very dependent on two things. One, is Deebo Samuel playing in this game? Brock Purdy does not know what to do when Deebo is not playing. This happened when they played against the Browns and Deebo went out. He kind of freaked out and didn't know what to do. And it happened this most recent week when Deebo went out. He didn't really know what to do at a lot of times. I think Deebo is such an important part of this team. And if he is playing, that gives the 49ers a significantly higher chance of winning the game. I also think the weather is going to be very dependent on it. Right now it says it's going to be sunny, which plays in the 49ers' favor. If it is raining, I might want to pick the Lions because Brock Purdy does not play well in rainy wet conditions. He really struggles to throw the ball well in those conditions. So if it is rainy, I'm picking the Lions. If it is sunny, I'm picking the 49ers. That is my pick for that game. And if Debo is not playing in this game, it really is going to lead me more towards the Lions because I think he is just that important. With the rain too, they kept comparing it to the Browns-Niners game earlier this year when it was raining in Cleveland and Brock really struggled to throw in the rain. I think it really does have an impact on him. So interested to see, I guess, how that goes. Look, if this is a close game, it's going to be interesting because I think Kyle Shanahan is someone who is a great coach when things are going well and when his team is up by a lot. I think he can continue to ride that wave and do a good job. When things are close, he is not exactly known for his in-game decision making and his play calling in those positions. So I'm interested to see if this game is close going into the second half. Does Kyle Shanahan kind of mess things up for the 49ers as well? Because I think that could definitely be it could be a factor in the game for sure. Okay, that is all I have for you guys today. Like I said, really looking forward to this weekend of football. We've got 3 football games left, so everyone soak it up, enjoy it. Thank you all so much for listening. If you could subscribe on YouTube, leave a comment there about your picks for this coming weekend, what you think the result of these games is going to be, let me know. If you could also subscribe or follow on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen there, leave a review or rating, share with a friend, all of that good stuff. I'd very much appreciate it. Enjoy these last couple weeks. Thank you so much for listening. And even though they're not playing anymore, go Browns.